A sheet of paper slid across the polished conference table, and before anyone even looked up, laughter filled the room. It was a janitor's job application from a worn-out single father whose work history seemed to end years ago. Someone circled his previous engineering experience with a red pen and joked that the man probably couldn't even fix a broken mop. Nobody noticed that the quiet applicant standing outside the glass doors wasn't embarrassed anymore. He looked strangely at peace, as if he had already survived something far worse than humiliation. Minutes later, the CEO would glance at one forgotten document, freeze in complete silence, and realize the name on that simple janitor resume was engraved on the company's oldest and most valuable patent. Before we continue, if you believe kindness is never weakness, forgiveness changes lives, hope deserves another chance, and every person has value no matter their job title, please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, share this story with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community. Graham Mercer had never imagined that the proudest achievement of his life would become invisible. 15 years earlier he had been one of the brightest mechanical engineers in his state. He loved solving impossible problems, filling notebooks with sketches, and believing that every invention existed to make ordinary workers safer. His greatest accomplishment was a revolutionary industrial cooling system that dramatically reduced equipment failures while protecting factory employees from dangerous overheating. The invention had transformed a struggling manufacturing company into an industry leader. At the time, everyone celebrated the executives, investors, and marketing teams. Graham received a modest bonus, shook a few hands, signed paperwork he barely had time to read, and returned to his drafting table because creating solutions mattered more to him than chasing recognition. Life changed far faster than any blueprint could predict. His wife, Eleanor, developed an aggressive illness that consumed nearly every family savings account. Graham spent years balancing hospital visits, engineering deadlines, and caring for their little daughter, Wren. After Eleanor passed away, grief settled into every corner of their modest apartment. Graham no longer woke with ideas for inventions. He woke wondering whether he could keep the lights on another month. Caring for Wren became his only purpose, but the endless absences from work and emotional exhaustion slowly pushed him out of the engineering world. Companies wanted recent experience, perfect resumes, and employees without family complications. Graham had none of those things. Years passed. Temporary jobs disappeared as quickly as they came. He stocked shelves, repaired bicycles, unloaded delivery trucks, and cleaned offices whenever work was available. Every paycheck disappeared into rent, groceries, school supplies, and keeping Wren's growing dreams alive. She never complained, even when birthdays became homemade cupcakes instead of parties or vacations became afternoons reading library books in the park. She carried her mother's gentle heart and her father's quiet determination. When another contract ended unexpectedly, Graham found himself staring at a job posting for janitorial staff at the same corporation where he had once helped develop groundbreaking technology. The company had expanded into a massive glass headquarters that overlooked the city skyline. Most employees entering those revolving doors had never heard his name. The few who might remember had long since retired. He ironed his only dress shirt before sunrise while Wren carefully brushed invisible dust from his jacket sleeves. She smiled with complete confidence, telling him that every building stayed successful because someone cared enough to keep it clean. Graham smiled back, hiding the sadness behind his eyes. Children had an incredible ability to find dignity where adults often searched only for status. The hiring office overflowed with applicants. Some chatted nervously while others stared at their phones. Graham waited patiently with a folder that contained far more memories than qualifications anyone wanted to read. The receptionist barely glanced at him before directing him toward another waiting area. Inside the interview room, several department supervisors reviewed resumes between hurried conversations. Their schedules were packed, and compassion had slowly been replaced by efficiency. Graham's application landed on the table. One manager frowned at the long employment gap. Another quietly questioned why an engineer wanted to mop floors. Someone joked that maybe inventing wasn't profitable enough anymore. Laughter bounced around the room with surprising ease. none of them realized Graham could hear every word through the slightly open door. He lowered his eyes, took a slow breath, and remembered Eleanor's favorite advice. She had always believed that another person's cruelty revealed their character, not yours. Instead of leaving in anger, Graham simply waited until his name was called. The interview lasted less than 5 minutes. Questions focused more on whether he could lift heavy buckets than anything else. Nobody asked about the patents listed deep within the resume because nobody bothered reading that far. They thanked him politely and promised to call if a position became available. Graham walked out with quiet dignity. At nearly the same moment, CEO Roland Ashcombe returned from an investor meeting. Unlike many executives, Roland still enjoyed reviewing random hiring files every Friday afternoon because he believed they revealed the company's culture better than financial reports ever could. While flipping through applications, one page caught his attention. The surname Mercer felt strangely familiar. He read further, his expression changed instantly. He pulled another folder from a locked cabinet containing copies of the company's founding intellectual property records. There it was, patent number 4178. Lead inventor, Graham Mercer. Roland's heartbeat quickened. That single invention had generated hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. It had saved countless manufacturing hours, reduced workplace injuries, and built the company's reputation for innovation. Every annual shareholder presentation celebrated the technology, yet almost nobody still employed knew the inventor had once walked those same hallways. Roland immediately called the human resources director. The interview notes arrived. One sentence stood out. Applicant appears overqualified but unsuitable. Roland stared silently at the page before asking who had written it. No one in the room answered immediately. Instead of raising his voice, Roland quietly requested every manager involved in the interview to join him in the executive conference room. The atmosphere shifted dramatically. Roland placed Graham's resume beside the original patent documentation. No speech was necessary. Every person around the table slowly realized what they had done. The laughter from earlier echoed inside their own memories with painful clarity. Roland explained that companies often believed they lost innovation because talented people disappeared. The truth, he said, was often much sadder. Sometimes companies simply stopped seeing the people who built them. He immediately ordered that Graham be contacted. The recruiting team tried calling several times before finally reaching Wren after school. Graham's old phone had stopped working that morning because the service had been disconnected. Wren borrowed a neighbor's phone and listened in confusion as someone from corporate headquarters insisted they desperately needed to speak with her father. Graham assumed there had been a mistake. He returned the next morning wearing the same carefully ironed shirt. Employees who had ignored him the previous day suddenly greeted him with awkward politeness. Word had already spread through the building. Roland welcomed him personally instead of sending an assistant. The CEO apologized without excuses. He admitted the company had failed him years earlier by celebrating products more than people. He acknowledged that Graham's invention continued changing lives while its creator struggled to pay rent. He explained that legal agreements had been technically followed, but gratitude had not. Graham listened quietly. Bitterness would have been understandable. Instead, he simply asked whether the company had become a place where young engineers still cared about solving problems rather than collecting promotions. Roland smiled for the first time that morning. He admitted they were trying. That answer mattered more than any apology. Instead of offering charity, Roland offered Graham something far more meaningful. He invited him to become Director of Innovation Mentorship, helping young engineers develop practical ideas while ensuring inventors understood the value of their own work. The company also established a permanent inventor recognition program so no contributor would ever again disappear behind corporate success. Graham hesitated, not because he doubted himself, because he feared losing time with Wren. Roland immediately adjusted the position into a flexible daytime schedule that allowed Graham to continue taking his daughter to school and attending every important moment in her life. For the first time in years, hope outweighed fear. The transition wasn't easy. Some employees felt embarrassed facing the man they had dismissed. Others quietly avoided him altogether. Graham never sought revenge. Whenever someone apologized, he accepted sincerely. He believed carrying resentment demanded energy better spent building something worthwhile. Young engineers quickly discovered that Graham never began meetings by discussing profits. He began by asking which problem truly mattered to ordinary people. He reminded everyone that inventions were not trophies but promises to improve someone's life. Whiteboards once filled with flashy concepts slowly became covered with practical solutions that made factories safer, equipment more reliable, and workers more respected. His influence spread beyond engineering. Cleaning staff noticed he always greeted them by name, receptionists appreciated that he never rushed past their desks, interns found encouragement in his patient advice. Executives slowly realized leadership looked different when someone had experienced both boardrooms and broom closets. Meanwhile, Ren watched everything unfold with quiet pride. Her classmates had once teased her because her father cleaned buildings for temporary work. Now she never bragged about his new position. She simply carried herself with quiet confidence, knowing true dignity had never depended on a job title. Months later, the company hosted its annual innovation celebration. Instead of unveiling another product first, Roland invited every employee into the central atrium. A bronze plaque covered by a simple cloth stood near the entrance. Roland spoke briefly about memory, gratitude, and the danger of measuring people by appearances. When the cloth was removed, employees saw Graham Mercer's name engraved beneath the words that every visitor would now read. Every great company stands because someone chose integrity before recognition. The applause lasted several minutes. Graham didn't cry immediately. He looked toward Ren standing beside the front row. She smiled exactly the way Eleanor used to smile. In that single moment, years of silent struggle seemed to soften. No award could erase loss. No promotion could return the family they once had, but dignity, once restored, became something no hardship could ever steal again. Before we reach the end of this journey, take a moment to leave a meaningful comment. Tell us about a time when someone looked beyond appearances and believed in you, or share the lesson you think this story teaches about respect, humility, and second chances. As the ceremony ended, employees returned to work carrying something more valuable than motivation. They carried perspective. They remembered that the person pushing a mop might once have changed an industry. The quiet applicant in the waiting room might possess wisdom no resume summary could capture. Every hallway became a reminder that kindness costs nothing, while disrespect can blind people to extraordinary human value. Graham never forgot the laughter that greeted his application, but he chose not to let it define the rest of his life. Instead, he transformed humiliation into compassion, disappointment into mentorship, and forgotten brilliance into hope for an entire generation. The patent that once represented only professional success became a symbol of something even greater, that true greatness is measured not by titles, wealth, or applause, but by the lives we live after we ourselves have fallen. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that every person you meet is carrying a story you cannot see, and sometimes the greatest treasures in the world arrive wearing the simplest clothes. Kindness may not always change a moment, but it can change an entire life.